Hello and welcome to another video, ProfPaulB. Today we'll be looking at reading and parsing a textual file, basically a JSON file that we will be storing as a raw resource in an Android app. Um, why would you want to store a file in your as a resource with your Android app? Well, there could be some things like, for example, EULA or info for an about screen, something that takes up a little bit more room than you would feel comfortable storing as, let's say, a constant or as a string resource. So that would be a good example of something that you can put as a raw resource. These files are private to your app. They get deleted when your app is removed, but they're not writable. That's the one caveat. In order to read a file bundled in raw, we have to call the getResources method off the context and call the open raw resource, passing in r.raw.filename. So we're all used to our good old friend R, and we were used to the R being r.id, r.layout, but now if we want to access things within the raw, we use r.raw. Okay, makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're going to do. I do have a starter project on GitHub. If you want, you can access it from the link below in the description. The one thing is, you might know Android Studio sometimes is a little bit finicky if setups are not exactly the same. If you do want to use that project, you're more than welcome. My setup is Android Studio 2.2.2 with build tools 25.0.0, and I have an AVD that can handle API 18 or better, or a device that can do the same. If you have problems with the starter project, simply recreate your own. You'll see it's a simple app. You can just pause the video, set it up, and then start up again and follow along. What I did do, I also put the .json file at the root of the GitHub project, so you could just import it from there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second here. So here, if you need a refresher on JSON, go to json.org. It's a very, very simple. I like it a lot, actually. If you look at this one slide, which again I borrowed from there, the whole definition, you can actually access it from here. So every object starts with a curly brace and consists of string value pairs or name value pairs, similar to maps and dictionaries, whatnot. So basically every object has a string value pair. If that's the end of the object, then that's it. Then we close it with the ending brace. If there are other name value pairs, we just add a comma, name value, comma, name value, comma, name value. When we're done, boom, closing brace. Couldn't be easier. Array, you might not be able to make it out too well here, but this is the square bracket. So an array is a similar, where we have a square bracket, and it could be an empty array. If we followed this right at the top, it's an empty array. Or if we have a value, we can have a value, and what can a value be? Can be a string, a number, an object, so an object such as this, could be an array, could be the literals true, false, or null. So those are the values that can be included within an array. And it's the same thing like we did with the object, is we just keep cycling here. So there's a comma between every single element of the array. And once we're done the array, the last element does not have a comma, and we just close it up here with the closing brace. Okay, so this documentation, this one slide just says so much. I think JSON is really nice. From someone who had a background in XML, this is the simplicity of JSON is just quite refreshing. So here are some of the objects actually in Android that are built in. So it's not like with Java. Yeah, I do have another video on parsing JSON with Java, but and there we had to use an external library. With Android, it comes built in. Android was built from the ground up for accessing JSON type data, which we know a lot of the big players today, like the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Tumblrs, the YouTube, they use JSON as their mechanism for interchanging information. So again, Android was built from the ground up with these objects built in. So we have JSON objects. Here we see there are a few constructors. We will probably using this one, JSON object given a string. That will actually create a JSON object given a string, and we're going to see how that works in a second. And we also have, here are some methods. So we have some getter methods: get boolean, get double, get int, get JSONArray, get JSONObject, get long, and get string. So these are very helpful. We also have our JSONArray. And JSONArray, we can actually get, given an index, we can get an object. Then we can also call get boolean, get double, get int, get JSONArray, get JSONObject, get long, get string. We'll take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So this is the example we're going to do. Go ahead and pause the video if you want. If you want to actually build it from scratch. It's very, very simple app. One button, one text view, and all we're going to be doing is accessing the file from raw, and then reading it, and then parsing it and displaying the results. That's the gist of this application. So it's very simple, but for a first introduction, I think it's quite nice. And I do have an exercise for you to do at the end as well. Here, if you can't use, for any reason, you can't use the project in GitHub, or if Android is complaining a little bit too much about different libraries and whatnot, go ahead and create the application yourself. Like I say, just take a look at the previous slide and create the application. The only thing is you can also create the JSON file. It's not that time consuming, but I did put that as a root in GitHub, so you could actually just import that file into your project. And first, what you have to do is, typically the raw folder is not created for you. So you just right click the res folder, click new directory, type in raw, and then wherever you saved your student_grades.json, then you would just copy it there and paste it into the raw folder, and that way it will become available for your project. So this is a sneak peek at the code that we're going to do. This is basically the load grades method is the event handler for our one and only button. And you'll see we actually get the resources, and we get an input stream by calling the open raw resource on our student grades file. And then we actually create a scanner. We wrap the scanner around it. You might remember scanner from your early Java days. And it works well for small files, and I use it regularly when the files are not too large. Of course, if it's larger files, you might want to use some other input stream. You might want to use buffered input stream or whatever. In this case, we're just going to use a scanner. And how we're going to do it is we're going to have a string builder, create a new string builder, and as long as the scanner has items, we're actually just going to build on our builder, and then we're going to call a method parse JSON, and that method is just going to parse the JSON, and we're going to have another builder here, and we're going to parse the JSON until we reach the end, and then we're just going to display it. Okay, so let's go. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. I think that's it. Yeah, I'll display that exercise at the end again. But I think let's take this away for now. And, oh, actually, no. I do want to have something visible here. There we go. See if we can do something like this. Can we do something like this? So if we put this here, and let me go ahead and in our main activity, so here's where the coding is going to be. Like I say, here's where the fun starts. So you can follow along, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to resources, and I'll just call it RES. It might be slightly different than the slides, and we're going to call get resources, and from that we're actually going to create an input stream. Oops. Input stream is equal to res dot open raw resource. Again, here r dot oops, see, here we go, r.id, r.raw.student grades. So if you don't have the student grades at this point, if it's giving you an error, make sure you have that. Make sure you have the structure here. Look at the, notice here's the res, and within the res is the raw folder, and within the raw folder is the student grades.json. And here we are, here's our student grades.json. Okay, so make sure you have that there. If you get an error, that is what the error is about. So now let me go ahead and create my scanner, and I'm just going to call it scanner is equal to new scanner, and I'm just going to put it, I'm going to wrap it around my input stream so I can have easy access to read it line by line. That's what I want to do. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to do while scanner, whoops, there we go, has next line. I'm going to read it line by line. Might have been faster just to type it out. Okay, so while it has next line, what am I going to do? I'm going to, I forgot to create my string builder, so let's go ahead and do that now. String builder, and I'm going to get rid of shorter name, I think like builder is equal to new string builder. And here what we're going to do is we're just going to append to we're going to read every line and we're going to append it. And let's just do next line. So let's just do next line. And that's it. So now we're building. Keep going, keep reading our string, or sorry, our file, and keep building our string. So now once we're done that, I'm just going to call a method called parse JSON. And I'm going to pass in, it's giving me an error now, but we'll take care of that in a sec. I'm going to pass in builder.toString. So basically, I'm going to pass in everything that we've built and a semicolon. And notice that Android Studio says I don't like that because that does not exist. So I'm going to say, well, why don't you create that for me? And this is thank you very much. And that is that. So now we have a string coming in. And maybe I will just, no, I'll leave it as that. S is fine. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to read this as JSON. So right now what we have is we have this file, and actually we have this file. You know what we could do? We could actually display this on our, just to see. Yeah, let's do that. I like doing these sanity checks every once in a while. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get a hold of my text view. And what did I call it? Text view, txt display. Let me just call it that. I know I called it something different in the resource. Is equal to our good old friend find view by ID, r.id.text underscore display. And let's go ahead and cast that. Actually, I don't need this part anymore. Let's go ahead and cast that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it to that string just to see, hey, does this work? Did we actually read the file? Set text. And we are going to put, this is going to be S. Let's just put S. We're going to see some JSON here. Go ahead and save. I'm going to run. And so that came out okay. And now what we're going to do is let's give it a shot. Okay, so it worked. Okay, it's not very human readable, but we did load our file, and right now it's just a string. So right now our app doesn't recognize this as JSON whatsoever. So that's what we're going to do now is we're going to parse it, and I do want to kind of have. There we go. Maybe if like this, we can see the JSON structure. So now let's see what we want to do is I'm going to enter a few times, and I'm going to start parsing. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a string builder, and I'm going to just keep building my string. Let's go ahead and do my string builder here. and I'm just going to call it builder is equal to new string builder. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the root of the JSON object. If you take a look, that's one thing about JSON that I didn't really mention. If you're not used to working with it, there's a root element that's either a root array or a root object. And here, in this particular case, we see it's the curly brace. So we have a root object, and we have our name value pair. There's one name value pair within the object, and that contains student grades, which is an object that has three name value pairs. One of the name, one of the full-time status, and the other one is the courses. And this actually name value pair, the name is courses, and the value is an array of objects. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So right now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this root object right here. So JSON object, and I'm just going to call this root is equal to, and I'm going to use, remember that constructor that accepted a string? That's exactly what I'm going to use right now. I'm going to use new JSON objects, whoops, and I'm going to pass in my string s. Oops, and there was a little bit of a hiccup there. Now I see there's something we have to take care of. We have to take care of the exception handling, and for now I'm just going to, let me just add this try catch. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start building stuff. So now what I want to do, I have the root. So within the root, like I mentioned, there's one name value pair. So there's student grades, and then there's this one object. So this is the object I want to get now. So I'm going to get that object by passing in the student grades name. So let's go ahead and do that. JSON object. And I'm going to call this one student grades. I'll just call it student is equal to root dot get JSON object. And what's the name of our object? We see it right there. There's the name. That's the name in the name value pair is student dash grades. Okay, so now we have our object. And now what we want to do is I'm going to append to my builder. And let's go ahead, builder dot append. And do I have a typo? I have a typo here. Okay, let me just fix that. So we have builder dot append, and then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in name colon, and now we're going to append to that. My typing today. We're going to type. What are we going to add? We're going to get this. We're going to get student dot get. This is what is it? What type is it? It's a string. So we're actually going to get student dot get string, and the name of that one is actually name. Okay. So now we're going to get student dot get string name. And finally, what I can do is I can actually append. I'm just going to append a new line character. And let's go ahead and do that, just to make it formatted a little bit better. I might be doing it slightly different than the slides, then that's fine. You can just take a look and see what the differences are. So I did that, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do Command D. No, I'm using it on, let's say Option D. There we go. Because I'm using it on my Mac, I'm used to using it on Windows. So Command D or Control D, depending on which operating system, will just duplicate the current line. And I'm using that just to save a little bit of time. So let's go ahead. Now we're going to do the full time. So let me go and change this to full time. And this is full dash time. Okay. And now what we're going to do, we have to be careful because full time is not a string. Full time is a Boolean. Okay. So that's what we're going to do here. So now let's go ahead and, whoops. So now let's go ahead and now what we have to get, so notice we got the name, we got the full-time status. So now we have to get a JSON array called courses. So let's go ahead and declare a JSON array. And we'll call this one courses. And where do we get this from? Well, we get this from this student object, and we call a get JSON array given the name courses. So let's go ahead and do that. So student dot get JSON array, and the name of that array is courses. Okay, so now we're coming along fine. And now what we're going to do is we're going to loop through. So let's go ahead and create a good old for loop. For int I is equal to 0, I is less than. So now we want to loop through this array. So we'll do courses dot length, and of course our good old I++. And now what we're going to do from within this, you know what? I didn't do my sanity check. Let me do my sanity check just to make sure. And here, what I'll have to do is I'll have to do builder dot toString. So I'm going to do my sanity check just to see if we're on the right track. I always like doing that. And let me bring this up. And we applied the changes. And let's give it a shot. Hey, so far so good. So far so good. And let's go ahead and continue. And now what we're going to do, we're going to be looping through our array. So for every element of our array, well, let me just open this up and get this back. Okay, so for every element in our array, we're going to have a name value pair, name and grade. So first thing we have to do is we have to get that JSON object. And given an array, these don't have names, but they're going to have ordinal positions. So let's go ahead and get that. So let's go JSONObject, and I'm just going to call this one course is equal to courses dot get JSONObject, and we're giving it the index. Okay. So now we have a course, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do our builder dot append. So what are we going to append? We're going to append the course, because the course dot get string. And what string are we getting? We're getting the name. Because let's take a look. Let's take a look at what we want to do. Is we want to display. Here's what we want to display. We want to display the course name and then the grade. Course name, grade. Course name, grade. So really it's course name colon space grade. So that's what we want to do. Okay. So let me just do this a little bit over. Okay, so now we have the course name, and then we said we wanted to have the colon. So let's go ahead and I'll do this on a couple lines. Let's go ahead and append. And what we're going to append a colon space. And then what we're going to append is we're going to append. What are we going to append now? Is we're going to append course.get the grade. Remember, course.get string, and the string is called grade. We can see it right there on the right. And finally, I do want to append a new line character, because otherwise they're all going to show up. And that is that. Actually, let's go ahead and save it, and let's run it. Let's just make sure that we did everything right. Let me get my emulator back up, and let's go ahead. And it's not too bad. I guess the one thing I'm not too crazy about is I'd rather have a space here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another new line character after the full-time status, just so that, let me go ahead and restart that. I'm a little bit picky when it comes to things like this. So let's go ahead and load grades. Yay. Okay, so we got what we got. So I hope you could follow along, and obviously, you know, you can pause the video at any time and rewind and whatnot, and just to get it working. And I did leave you. I want to leave you with an interesting assignment that you can work on. That's right over here, and you can pause this to take a look at it. So what I'd like you to do, just to have a bit of exercise doing this, is to create your own JSON file. Call this one student underscore info, and to modify the main activity so that there's the load grades. We did that one together. To create a new button, a load info, and to on that button click event to actually do the same thing. Put this file in raw, and to load it from raw, and to parse. You'll notice the JSON is slightly different, but just to practice with that. And it's a good idea to practice. Like I say, a lot of the major players today, they do have their RESTful API is very much using JSON. So it's a good skill to have. It's a good skill to practice on. So that's it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed. And please stay tuned. And thanks for watching.